Welcome back from your break. We are going to have a look at a timeline which shows us the history of the Earth. So, let's get started. The blue bar is the timeline with the dates filled in, and we are going to be looking at certain points on this timeline and seeing, well, what was the Earth like at that particular time in history? What types of animals existed at that particular time, if any? $4,600 million years ago, Earth was formed. It formed from dust and gases from the solar system. And if we look at the picture, not a very hospitable place to live. It was a molten sphere, hot temperatures. The atmosphere had carbon dioxide, methane, nitrogen, water vapor, no oxygen. It wasn't a very nice place to live because the Earth was so hot, volcanoes were erupting. There wasn't an atmosphere to stop meteorites from out of space hitting the Earth. So this is what it looked like. Volcanic eruptions, meteorites hitting the Earth. Not a very hospitable place for life to exist. About 4,000 million years ago, the first life on Earth came into being. These were simple cell-like structures, not even proper cells, and they didn't contain DNA, they contained RNA, but they were alive. Then, 3,900 million years ago, proper cells, life as we know it, with DNA, came into being. These were simple prokaryotic cells. And you should know from what you've done on cells that the word prokaryotic means that they didn't have a nucleus. They were very simple organisms similar to the bacteria which exist today. But these were very different because there wasn't any oxygen. So they used carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and inorganic minerals. And this is an example of a hot spring that exists today, and sulfur forms the yellow in the hot springs, and even today there are some of these very, very simple bacteria which don't need oxygen. They use sulfur, carbon dioxide, and energy from the hot springs to be able to survive. Then, 3,500 million years ago, bacteria as we know them existed, and these were weird because they used light to photosynthesize, so they could make their own food. They didn't have chlorophyll, and they didn't give off oxygen. But these at least were closer to the bacteria that we know today. Then, 3,000 million years ago, the first proper photosynthetic bacteria, which are called cyanobacteria, they had chlorophyll and they used light to produce food by photosynthesis, and they released oxygen as a waste product. They had a primitive type of chlorophyll. Now, these cyanobacteria exist today, and the picture shows some of the cyanobacteria that are actually found in water today. Fossils of these bacteria exist. And this is a place in Australia, and all of these funny-looking mounds are actually stromatolites, and they are fossils of these very, very simple photosynthetic bacterial cells that lived all those millions of years ago. Now, time's going by. The cyanobacteria are busy undergoing photosynthesis, and this causes the oxygen levels to rise. And that poisoned many of the bacteria that relied on carbon dioxide. Because the photosynthetic bacteria were using carbon dioxide, the carbon dioxide levels dropped. So the composition of the atmosphere is changing. Then, 2,000 million years ago, the first eukaryotic cells develop. What does eukaryotic mean? We know that eukaryotic means that they have got a proper nucleus, and if we look at this picture, there's the nucleus. That's why it's eukaryotic. But the important thing is they also had organelles. Okay, and here are some of the organelles in this particular unicellular organism. Scientists think that organelles probably arose when cells engulfed other bacteria and did not digest them, and the other bacteria kept on living inside them and helping them to survive. $800 million years ago, the first multicellular organisms occur, and they were probably produced by unicellular organisms that clumped together. For example, in this picture here, there are a whole lot of unicellular organisms clumped together, and they found that when they stayed together, they were safer. And they then started carrying out different life functions and helping each other out. And that is how multicellular organisms came into existence. Then, 550 million years ago, there was such a big change. Because from the simple microscopic bacteria and some multicellular cells which had existed for 150 million years, within a relatively short space of time, and I'm talking about geological time, so it's about 10 million years is a relatively short space of geological time, all these weird and wonderful different living things came into existence. And that is called the Cambrian Explosion. And that is when life exploded onto the scene in all its amazing diversity. This is an artist's impression of some of the weird organisms which existed. We still find some today that are quite similar, but there are quite a lot that do not exist in that form today. Oh, there's also a little snail, a little mollusk. But 430 million years ago, living things started being able to grow onto land. Animals left the sea and developed the ability to walk on land. As the sea levels dropped, some plants managed to survive on land. So after that time, land ecosystems also came into being. And that, in a nutshell, is the history of the Earth. I think your brains are a bit bursting by now, so let's take a break.